You know, you hear people complain about China, then about Russia, then about. But how about them? What right do they have to be in Africa that others don't have?
The presence of China and Russia in Africa is giving the West sleepless night. I've seen videos where the West are complaining, why is China in Africa? Why is Russia in Africa? In this video, I'm going to react on a video of President of Rwanda, Paul Kagame. You know Paul Kagame always, he's fearless, he's bold. While he's talking, he loves protecting his country. And you can tell for clear that he is not for the West. But, you know, that's with the speech only. But we want to see on the ground if he is not for the West or himself is a puppet. So let's listen to this video and then we'll come and react on it.
Oh, Russia. I think that's why I was forgetting it. It's another problem that we don't need to have. Russia or any other big power should not be our problem. The issue is these big powers have their own issues to sort out, and then they keep sucking in these small countries of ours. So Russia has the right to be anywhere they need to be legally, as any other country has the right to be anywhere, meaning those who come to Africa, you know, you hear people complain about China, then about Russia, then about. But how about them? What right do they have to be in Africa that others don't have? So I think what we need to do in Africa is to be together, to identify what we need in terms of partnership and who offers what we need. We work with such a people and leave them to their own other problems. Like they have a problem is the war in Ukraine. The origin of that, how it is being conducted, more importantly, how it is going to end, I don't know. I have no idea. So I cannot start making choices or decisions about such a thing. I have no idea. I have no possibility even of making impact on the outcome. Even if I had a certain view about it, still it doesn't make sense because it has no impact. It can't create any change. So the Russian situation or presence in Africa or anywhere, I think big countries like Russia will find a way of sorting it out. And while we are trying to sort out our own problems that affect us directly, that have nothing to do with one big country or another.
Welcome back. Now, for me personally, I think China and Russia in Africa is just a one way of colonizing Africa without colonizing Africa. It's one way of colonizing Africa without using power, without using a lot of power, you know, just soft colonization, or we call soft power. Because China is gaining from Africa, Russia is gaining from Africa. The West, France, USA has their part, or has had their part, or has had their, you know, something. They have come out with something from Africa. Now it's time for Russia and China gaining from Africa. It's not that, personally, it's not that I don't say that they are helping. They are helping, yeah. But what I have to say is replacing a colonizer with a colonizer is something we are trying to do. But we are replacing a hard colonizer with a soft colonizer. That's what I think personally. I don't know what you think. So in this video, Paul Kagame had to explain to them that if the West are having their thing here in Africa, if USA is in Africa, if Russia is in Africa, if France is in Africa, Germany is in Africa, why not China and Russia? That's what he said. He was explaining it. So I think what we have not understand as the leaders of Africa is that we want to do away with the uh, neo-colonization. And as a matter of fact, for me, I think China and Russia will come to colonize Africa in a way that we will not realize. Because if China is building Africa, China is building roads, China is building airports, China is building seaports without asking for something, what they are trying to do is that if one day will come, China will come and tell a country in Africa that, you know what, we own this country because we have built everything in this country. So you have to pack out and leave. It's just a way of colonizing indirectly, but slowly by slowly. With time, China will be so deep in Africa. Russia will be so deep in Africa, and will have no control over it. And recently, China in Africa is involving in Africa, has grown for the past 2 decades on economic investment, on soft power, on military presence, diplomatic influence. For example, economic investment, this is where China is deeply into Africa because they have invested in building infrastructure in Africa, including roads, railways, ports, airports, and power plants. A country like, for example, we have a country like Kenya, Ethiopia, and Nigeria. They have benefited from China massively. China has funded projects in these 3 countries, Kenya, Nigeria, and Ethiopia. Loans and debts that are being given to these African countries. Chinese has loans, by the way, that they are helping to fund infrastructure projects in Africa. So countries became over dependent in Chinese loan, and this will put them into some sort of cage. This will put these countries in some sort of cage, because if someone holds you with a loan, you cannot remove yourself there, because he will just tell you, you know what, you got my money, so what do? Give me your land so that I can leave you free. If you don't want, I'll eat from your country for more years to come. So loans and debts, and these are the things that the West countries like USA have held captivity of African countries. IMF, World Bank, name them. They have held captivities of Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, because we have their loans, IMF loan. They are controlling your country. Once they give you their loan, they are the one who are making these laws. They are the one who are making these amendments where financial bills and so on. You saw in Kenya last time. So loans that China are giving into African countries right now are very soft, but with time it will be hard. So this issue of Paul Kagame saying that why not China and Russia? He could just say, we don't want any these superior countries to come in our land to exploit us. We can do it by ourselves. The thing that we have not learned, or we are not learning as Africa, is that we want to build ourselves by ourselves. Africa for Africans, not Africa for other people, and then last we come, the Africans come last. Okay. China is a major consumer of African natural resources, especially oil, minerals, and metals. Countries like Angola, Nigeria, and Zambia export these resources to China. And you want to tell me that this is not a pathway of just like France is doing? The difference between China and France is that France is doing it in a hard way. Political wars, killing people, activating coups. But China is doing it in a diplomatic way. So that is the only difference. But with the time, people change, Another thing is diplomatic influence that China has to Africa. China lately have been cultivating close political relationship with many African countries, and often supporting African nations in international organizations like UN, where they share common positions on issues such as sovereignty and non-interference with internal affairs. Okay, so China has diplomatic influence in Africa, as far as I'm concerned, or as far as a lot of countries like US they are. So with time, this diplomatic influence will give birth to something that we cannot control. We see military presence in China, though it is limited, but it's growing every day. It is growing every day. China has military base in Djibouti. China has military base in countries like South Sudan. Also, China provide military equipment to some African countries. And France started like this, USA started like this, Germany started like this, Russia is doing that in Burkina Faso. So what are we saying here? What we are saying is that we don't want these countries in our Africa, though they are helping us, but we must find ways to help ourselves, because China realized that Africa is the way. So what we will do? What we will do, we will bite slowly. And let me tell you, PLO Lumumba once said that in the next 25 years, Africa will be recolonized. And I can see that. I can see that. This issue that we have, BRICS and UN, where BRICS, they are trying to convince some African countries to join BRICS. For me, I see it's like throwing maize to chicken, so that when it comes closer, you get hold of it. What we can do as Africans is not to depend on these countries. Now we are fully dependent in China. Kenya cannot do without China. We cannot build roads, railways without China. Name it, Nigeria, Tanzania, you just name it. So we are over depending on these countries, and that's what the problem is. One day I said that if it's doing legit business, it's okay, but depending fully on them, giving us roads without paying back, no. Something is fishy somewhere. Something is not going on good somewhere. But with time, let's talk about Russia in Africa. Russia, just like China, it's engaging itself in actively in Africa. We see in the West, in Sahel, in Mali, in Niger, in Burkina Faso, supporting military force in Burkina Faso, and it's doing massively in African countries and gaining, because Burkina Faso is gaining technology from Russia, and Russia is gaining something from Burkina Faso. So they are trying to strengthen political ties and military ties within African countries, often mostly positioning themselves alternatively to Western influence. Okay, so countries like Central Republic and Libya and Mali, sometimes you see Russia training their military and so on and so on. Economic engagement, Russia too is engaging economically in the matters of Africa. And especially in the nuclear side, nuclear energy, mining, agriculture, China or Russia is actively engaging to this. So when we see here, we see first thing is military involvement. Why is it military first? Have you ever seen a military over Kenya into Russia? That we have military base in Russia, we have military base in China, we have military base in USA. Why haven't you seen any African country having military base in these white countries? Why? But them, they have military bases here. We have France having military base in Ivory Coast and Guinea and all these countries in the West. So each and every countries from the West, China, Russia, they are fighting to have military bases in our countries in Africa. Why? There is something cooking. There's something cooking. Long-term war that we will never see it coming. But we need to be, what do we say? We have to be so vigilant. Okay? We have to be so vigilant on this. So China approach and China involvement and is more economic and development focused, and its strategy centered around trade. You see, they are more into trade in Africa. They're doing a lot into trade in Africa. They wanna focus. They are focusing mostly in trade, food productivity, trading. You name it. So, or I can say both China and Russia are filling vacuums left by traditional West powers, particularly in countries facing internal conflicts and economic challenges. The involvement reflects Africa's growing importance in global geopolitics, but it's very risky for us as African countries, because it's not something to smile about. 5 years to come, 10 years to come, something will build out of this China and Russian involvement in these countries. Why are they coming in countries where there is mostly conflicts? Because it's the weakest they can go through. They find your weakest spot and they go through it. Because when you are at war, you embrace anything. When you are at war, any Um, let me say this. Someone who's bringing food aid, you embrace. Someone who's bringing a health care aid, you embrace. You don't care if he's a bad person or not person. That's why you see China and Russia mostly engaging in countries actively, like Burkina Faso, where there's schools, countries where there is conflicts, because they want to get that side of, that weakest spot of that country. But for me, I don't see if it's good. But personally, I don't know what you think. You can tell me in the comment section what you think about that. But here, the video was about Paul Kagame telling these wise people, if the West are in Africa and they are thriving in Africa, why not other countries? That's not a statement good to say. We could say that we don't want all of them in the countries, but let's see what's cooking behind this. So tell me what you think in the comment section about this video. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Until next episode, peace be with you.